Welcome to another week, another show of Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. You'll see momentarily on the screen our good buddy Mitch Fick joining us. Nick, a news anchor and sports anchor with Fox28 and CBS2, a station that carries this Hawkeye show, as well as the other Sinclair broadcast stations throughout the state of Iowa, Des Moines, Sioux City, and Ottumwa, Southern Iowa. Happy early 96th birthday to your grandma, Katie, and of course, hello to your dad, Steve, and the rest of the Fick family, your mom, and just always great to see you, Mitch. So yes, personal ties aside, we got Hawkeyes to discuss, and a bit of a bruise. You were at yesterday's media conference as we record this on Wednesday afternoon, September 11th. Yes, unfortunately, that's September 11th. So take a moment to pause and pray on that as well today. But Mitch, let's you and I talk about yesterday's presser with Kirk Ferentz and some of the player availability. Tough bruise last week, losing a 2019 game to the in-state rival, quote-unquote, little brother Iowa State Cyclones, who didn't play like little brothers. Rocco Becht and crew came out and played that second half like Cade McNamara and the Hawks didn't. What a tale of two halves, Mitch.
Yeah, it's a tough one. And, it's always difficult to do these Tuesday pressers after a loss because the team's got that 24-hour rule. And so by the time they get to the practice field Monday morning, they're on to the next one. And then the media shows up the next day. They're two practices in, 72 hours removed from the loss. And here we are asking about it again. And we've got Troy coming up this week. You know, the opener is always the opener. There's a lot of pomp and circumstance with that. You get all summer to look up the other team. Iowa State's Iowa State. The rivalry is always going to get a ton of attention. And now you've got this kind of purgatory matchup against Troy. You're trying not to look ahead to Minnesota and trying to get back Floyd next Saturday up in Minneapolis. So a bit of a strange vibe, I guess you'd say, talking to the team and Coach Ferentz yesterday, because Iowa doesn't lose games like they did against the Cyclones, where they rushed for 200 yards. They had one of those 8-point leads. Remember that Fox stat that blew up a couple of years ago, that they were something like 78-2 going into this game when leading by 8 points at any point. They're like 78-3 now. These are just games that Iowa doesn't lose, particularly in the fashion they do, with a double-digit lead against Iowa State, where a great quarterback performance by a Cyclone in the second half brings them back. Troy is such a different team than they were last year. They've lost so many players to the transfer portal. They are not the team that won back-to-back Sun Belt championships these last couple of years. So it's an interesting matchup. They are not a great rush offense or rush defense. Iowa has a great rush offense, thanks to Kaleb Johnson, that offensive line. But again, it's tough after you're coming off a Cy-Hawk loss, looking ahead of the Florida-Rosedale game a little bit, to sit here and wrap up the non-conference season in a way that can maybe build a little faith, not just within the walls of the program, but certainly in the fan base as well, who are wondering what the heck's going on after last Saturday.
By the way, Kaleb Johnson, when we're talking about all this stuff, I don't want to, you mentioned him earlier in this segment, and I want to get back to him. What a performance the last 2 weeks. And it seems like whenever I hear Hamilton, Ohio, we always think of the Hamilton, Ohio native of Greg Stokes, former Hawkeye basketball playing great. But now you see this Hamilton, Ohio native in his junior year. But nice year last year. But man, these first two games, and yes, he was suspended that first half of the Illinois State game. But my goodness, Mitch, 100 plus in the second half. 187, almost 200 yards this past week against Iowa State. You talk about running with a purpose and a passion, and the lineman. I want to hit two things with you on this. Besides Kaleb Johnson, that much maligned offensive line in the past is now healthy, experienced, and a set lineup. I'm not making excuses for the past, but that has a huge deal moving forward with this line. So it's great. You've been talking to the lineman. You've been talking to Kaleb Johnson. Fill us in on where I'm at with this, please.
There was so much talk about all the defensive experience coming back, and rightfully so, because that defense has been that defense. But there are so many starts on this offensive line over the last 3-4 years, and you get a running back stable that isn't just Kaleb Johnson. I know he's the number 4 rusher in the country right now, but LaShawn Williams is an all Big Ten running back. We saw Jazz Patterson, even though he hasn't played yet this year. He had a big game against Iowa State, had that big run in last year's Cy-Hawk game. And we've seen Kamari Moulton flash, a guy who got the start in week 1. There's just a lot of talent in that Iowa backfield. And with that offensive line that's only given up 1 sack so far, too, that's a big deal. They're really meshing early and well. And again, Troy is ranked 120th against the run in the country. You have to think, even if it's not Kaleb Johnson, we saw LaShawn Williams go off against Western Michigan in the non-conference finale last year. We've seen Kamari get his carries and touchdowns against the Broncos as well. This could be a game. I know a lot of people want to see Cade bounce back and get him straightened out after a rough second half against the Cyclones, but what an opportunity for this rush offense and that offensive line to really flex their muscles and make a statement against the Trojans.
Let's talk a little bit about the defense and what you gleaned from yesterday's presser and
Yeah, 4 offensive plays, explosive offensive plays in the second half, all through the pass too. again, in a game that a lot of things happen that we don't see happen in Iowa games. Usually the things they do are leading to wins. You don't see the defense give up a 75-yard touchdown a whole lot. Kind of shades of Nebraska last year when there was a deep ball again. It just felt weird. And you have to think that with the amount of experience they have, with the amount of leadership, especially in the secondary, that things like that won't happen again. The throw from Beck that Sebastian got burned on there, setting up the field goal. I mean, that's a great throw. That's an unbelievable throw and fantastic route. And your hat goes off. That first touchdown to Jaden Higgins. You can't ask TJ Hall to do any more than he did. I mean, that kid was right there for an interception. And I'm guessing 6 out of 10 times he makes that pick or at least breaks it up. It's just a great throw. And Jaden Higgins and Jalen Knoll are two fantastic receivers. And again, we saw flashes from Beck last year in Ames of what he could be in the Cy-Hawk game. It was his second career start. And there's a reason why he was offensive freshman of the year in the conference. He's got an opportunity. If he keeps growing the way he does, that kid can lead the Cyclones to the top of the Big 12. And that's a Big 12 that's got 3 or 4, maybe even 5 teams that can compete for that top spot. But he can be right there and they can be right there because of number 3. And it's really exciting if you remove yourself from the Cy-Hawk rivalry to look across the side of the state and see what he's doing there. He's a special player. And, that's saying something considering Brock Purdy has not been too far removed in that spot too. He really is fun to watch. But, this Iowa defense gets a chance to make things right, I think, a little bit, or at least start the healing, so to speak, against Troy. Again, an offense that has shown a little bit of ball control. They have 6 drives already this year, scoring drives that have gone double-digit plays and have been really impressive at times against Nevada and Memphis. But this is an opportunity. You've already forced 4 turnovers after forcing 15 all of last year. They've really tried to focus on that. And, I know how much pride they took in having a shutout, not just at halftime against Iowa State, but certainly for the whole game against Illinois State. I can't help but think we're going to get back to that Iowa defense we all know and love against Troy.
I agree with that so much, Mitch, for a couple of reasons. Iowa State replaces Iowa in the AP top 25. They're at 21 now, and Iowa's out. But if they do what they're supposed to do, to your point, I believe them. They will be back in the top 25 sooner than later. And the great news to that, Mitch, is it's up to them. Destiny is in their own hands. A lot of big games upcoming. And I don't want to overlook Troy, and I know they're not either on Saturday. Kinnick Stadium, 3 o'clock kick on FS1. And then that Minnesota game you mentioned the following week. I don't want to look too far ahead before the bye and then playing at Ohio State. But that 6:30 kick in Minneapolis against the Minnesota Golden Gophers will be on NBC National TV for the Big Ten Saturday night. He is Mitch Fick, news anchor, sports anchor, Eye on the Hawks podcast. You see his logo behind him there. Great work, Mitch. You and our buddy Owen Sebring, love it. Mitch, of course, you see all his information at the bottom of the screen, along with mine and the rest of our guests throughout this program and every program. Mitch Fick, it's great to see you personally and professionally, and we'll catch up with you, if not next week, very shortly thereafter. Thanks, Mitch.
Looking forward to it, Dave. Thank you.
I am as well, and thank you. For Mitch Fick, I'm Dave O'Hara. We'll be back with more Hawkeyed and Doug Wagner, and then close out the show with Scott Pritchard. Back with more in just a few moments. Hey, Dave O'Hara, please be sure to smash that subscribe button here on YouTube. Your support means the world to us, so we can continue to bring you all the best Hawkeye content with current and former players and interviews.
Hawkeyed is brought to you by Bettor Edge, your ultimate social betting marketplace. With no VIG, you're bound to win more on every bet on Bettor Edge. Founded by Hawkeye alum James Siles and proud Iowan Greg Kieski, Bettor Edge delivers an unmatched betting experience. Plus, what's not to love when they're committed to supporting charities and children's hospitals near you? Join the action now. Sign up at bettoredge.com/Hawkeyed and get $10 to start winning more today. Bettor Edge, where your social betting means your bets go further and you win more.
Welcome back to Hawkeyed with me, Dave O'Hara. As you'll see on the screen momentarily, Doug Wagner, our buddy, joining us, the voice of WMT, the voice of Iowa, the Iowa Hawkeyes, Bumper Brigade, besides his morning show, but the pregame Hawkeye show on radio. Also, the postgame call-in show with Marvin McNutt, Iowa's all-time leading receiver, and me. So we've got a lot going on to get to with Doug. My friend, great to see you as always. How you doing? And we got recovery week from the loss last week to the Cyclones. But that's what I want to hone in on with you. You have one of the most interesting perspectives in the state. You talk to fans beforehand in the Bumper Brigade pregame show, and everybody's bumping and ready to go into the game, and they're excited. And they come out 3.5, 4 hours later. We talk to them on radio after the fact. What was your experience with fans after this tough loss 2019 to the Iowa State Cyclones, Doug, please?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me back in the program again, Dave. I really do appreciate it. At the corner of Melrose and Melrose, 3 hours before the kickoff of the game, you run into the Iowa State fans both. And it was a lot of traffic. Usually it takes me about, I don't know, 45 minutes to get from Cedar Rapids down into position, but this took us about an hour and 15 minutes because of the extra people. They say that for the Cy-Hawk game, there's an extra 25,000 people that are just tailgating who don't even care about the game. They just want to go down there, see and be seen as well, and definitely ran into that. But out of all the people, I had my friends from the Iowa Sports Radio Network on as well, the Bumper Brigade. And I think for the most part, we were all thinking that Vegas maybe had it wrong at Iowa -2.5, that they thought maybe that Iowa would do a little bit better. There's some people who are saying, hey, maybe even take the over on this game rather than the under, which historically has worked. But Vegas knows what they're doing, man. I'm telling you what, Mike Palm and the guys at Circa Sportsbook, they understand the game the way that it is. I had pegged 31-10 because I was optimistic based on the way that Cade McNamara played the end of the second quarter and the entire second half against Illinois State. And the fans were too. They were very optimistic. Some really good things to be optimistic for. Obviously, the running game. Keep on Kaleb Johnson, just running like a beast, 300 yards total in 6 quarters, 50 yards a quarter, and then you go to the post game in the Al Turf or Cat Hawkeye huddle, and there were a bunch of drowned squirrels over there. Man, it was really, really tough because you let that game go, and I think Kirk in his news conference on Tuesday really hit on some things that, maybe this is one of the most disappointing losses that he's ever been a part of. And it was as a fan too. No reason whatsoever why you get inside the 5-yard line and have it 1st and goal and you don't give Kaleb Johnson the ball every single time at this point. Just didn't make any sense. And that's how people were drowning their spirits in the post game. Real huge up and then just boom, and it just fell completely down. But tell you what, that black and gold never left my wrist, not once. Once a Hawk, always a Hawk, baby.
I was just going to say, well stated, nor should it, because you talk about a tale of two halves, though. Back-to-back, second half, great from Illinois State. Rolling into that first half, we're thinking as fans, okay, great. Iowa's got it rolling. They're going to have back-to-back weeks here, back-to-back halves. Came out, and Rocco Beck, hey, as they say, Doug, those guys are on scholarship on the other side of the field, too. Yeah. Rocco Beck, the 2 wide receivers. You still had Abusama in the backfield that hadn't done much because Iowa had him in check, and 4 big pass plays really did the Hawkeyes in, truthfully, was the tail of the tape. And then, of course, a Dubuque senior kid, Conradi, hits a 54-yard bomb with 6 seconds to go, margin of victory. Now, we could nitpick a lot of things, Doug. Hawks went for 2. Do you go for 2? Do you do the 1-point conversion? It would have been a 20-20 tie, but then the game would have played out a little differently down the stretch. Right. So they get the 2-point conversion is 21-20. I mean, a lot of variables there, but to your point, with Troy coming in, the Hawks now are a 22-point favorite with my buddy, as you mentioned, Mike Palm, Circa Sportsbook. And on your station, WMT, I host the Circa Sportsbook show every Wednesday night with Mike. And we're going to have Scott Pritchard on next segment. And Scott joins us on that radio show as well on Circa. Scott, a professional sports bettor, and like you, me, and Mike, Northeast Iowa natives. But he's talking about the over-under, too, and the point spread. And it's been interesting to watch how that changed, to your point, with the Iowa State game. And a lot of fans did in-game betting and that type of thing too. And it just, to me, Doug, that's the thing I don't want to have happen to the Hawks. I don't want them to have that second half dictate the rest of the season.
Exactly. I know. That whole 72-2 record when they're up by 8 points at any point in the game, and then, throw that one out the window. I mean, obviously what happened, and you don't like to pick on any one person, but boy, that Xavier Wampa play, allowing that long touchdown, that was one of the things that broke the camel's back. As far as giving them, second lease in life, the roughing the kicker penalty on that punt, just silly things like that. There's like one thing out of all of the 80 plays in the game that you can go through and say there are 2 that really dictated it. But for me, honestly, it's why do you not run the ball? And I think that's the thing that they're going to have to just rely on that and allow Cade to either get comfortable with it. I was listening to another podcast here recently, and they were saying maybe Cade's got the first half of this upcoming game. I don't know if that's what they're going to do, if that's not what they're going to do, but look, after Troy, you gotta make the grade against Troy, number one. But then you got the off week, and then you sink right into that Big Ten play, and Iowa's got to figure it out because they still have the possibility for a 10-win season at this point. I think a lot of fans, not only inside the locker room of their own team, but a lot of fans outside the locker room are going to be disappointed if they don't achieve that mark at this point this time this year.
You know, Doug, it's interesting you mentioned that about Kaleb Johnson. Not only did he not get the ball on those 2 field goal possessions down within the 5-yard line, he wasn't even in the game on some of those plays. So that was vexing, and people were questioning that. But then I thought it was great that Jay Higgins wasn't trying to bail Xavier Wampa out. He said, hey, on that pass over the top, you know, it looked like Xavier got burned, and he did. But I've got to check the wide receiver within the legal zone between the line of scrimmage and the 5-10 yards afterwards. And Jay said he missed the check and didn't, you know, bump into the receiver and slow him down. So he went unfiltered, unedited, just boom, straight down the field, and Rocco Beck hit him. So there's a lot going on. I love that Phil Parker's defense still, of all the great players, Doug, that we talk about with that Phil Parker defense, it is a collective unit. Yes, there are some great players, but, and again, I don't think Jay was just trying to take sympathy on himself. I think that was a missed assignment. So I'm glad he owned that, Doug.
Completely agree with you. And it is. And for me, there was just one of those where my eyes just popped out of my head. I was, whoa, did he slip? Did anything happen? But I understand that now that you explained that. I didn't see that part of what Jay Higgins said, but it completely makes sense because, you know, there's some times where Iowa State had a check on an Iowa wide receiver that looked like it was kind of a gray area as far as is that pass interference, is that not? They kept the flags in. Look, here's the whole deal is that Tim Lester's got a couple games of this new offense in there. They look like they're more comfortable in it day after day. That offensive line, oh, good Lord, a huge difference in that. And it just makes huge difference. But the only other thing is that the defensive line for Iowa, they went kind of quiet, comparatively speaking. You go from an FCS to an FBS team. You're going to do that, but they're really going to have to step up against all the rest of the Big Ten opponents once they get past Troy. But first off, those Trojans come into town. It's going to be 3 p.m. kick, so that means at noon we're going to be at the corner of Melrose and Melrose with our Garrett Popcorn Company popcorn. And we're going to have the folks from Pita's slinging their Mediterranean food over there. And we're going to have an hour long of pregame with Gary Dolphins, kick things off right at high noon.
Doug, my friend, great stuff from you as always. Can't wait to talk to you again on radio this weekend, but also in the next week or two on TV. Great to see you again. Thanks so much, Doug.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it. On Iowa.
On Iowa, indeed. Go Hawks. For Doug Wagner, I'm Dave O'Hara on Hawkeyed. We'll be back to close out the show with our buddy Scott Pritchard, Northeast Iowa native and professional sports bettor in Vegas. Back with more in just a few moments. Welcome back to Hawkeyed with me, Dave O'Hara. Momentarily, you'll see our buddy Scotty Pritchard joining us. Scotty P, Northeast Iowa native, professional sports bettor in Vegas. Last 30-plus years, very successful, I might add, by the way. And Scott's going to talk about some of the contests he's in, where he's finished. I do know last year in the special invite from Circa, our friends at the Circa Sportsbook, Scotty P was leading the whole way, first or second, right there, and then ended up finishing a half game out of second for third behind the Mad Russian Kenny White, winning it all. But you have been successful multiple years in that contest, Scotty P. It changed this year. They brought more special invites in the Circa Football Friday fantastic event they have every Friday, the Elimination, the Survivor Series, and then also the Golden Nugget. You're doing very well in that contest. Scott Pritchard, it's pritchardspicks.com or at Pritchard Wins via social media. You'll see Scotty P's information at the bottom of the screen along with mine. My friend, great to see you again. It's been since last football season. You join us on radio every week for our Circa Sportsbook sports betting show, Mike Palm and me. Scotty P, great to see you again. How you doing, my friend?
Likewise, David. I'm a big fan of you, big fan of the show, my friend.
Oh, thank you so much. And I'm a big fan of what you're doing because, viewers, if you follow Scotty P, again, at Pritchard Wins via social media or pritchardspicks.com, his free picks, 62+% winning, 66+% winning on his paid picks. So, folks, as you know, if you go 52%, you have to go 52% or over to break even to win profit. Here's our guy just crushing it. So, Scotty P, a couple of things. We mentioned the contest you're in and how well you're doing. But I'd like to talk to you about a viewer question we've got. And also, I want you to discuss and take some time to stretch this out. The Hawkeye line via Circa Sportsbook, the free app, download and start playing. It went from 22.5 for the Hawks being favored. Now it's 23. Again, depending when you hop online. It's Wednesday afternoon, September 11th. Yes, that's September 11th, 23 years ago. So a pause and a prayer for September 11th, obviously, as always. But Scotty P, let's you and I talk about how that line moved for the Hawkeyes, and the over-under went from 38.5 now to 39 against Troy. And then a viewer question, so handle all this at once and take some time. He wanted me to address, and it's Gary from Northeast Iowa, wanted me to talk to you about in-game betting. Of course, with the Cyclones and that huge comeback in the second half last week with their 20-19 victory over the Hawks, Circus said that their book went went crazy because a lot of the fans did the in-game betting when the Cyclones started turning the tide. So take your time, please, and stretch out both of those explanations for us, please.
First things first, the Iowa-Troy game, Iowa hosting Troy this coming weekend. Iowa coming off a heartbreak loss to Iowa State. It was 13-zip at halftime. Iowa has been known to do this in the past. I'm a big fan of their I'm a big Iowa Hawkeye fan, and I respect what they do with the Iowa Hawkeye culture, if you will. The only downside that I see consistently is they're ultra conservative. And up 13-zip at half, they should have respectfully had more points. They lost 20-19. I give the Cyclones of Iowa State a lot of credit to come back and win that game. But I'm here to tell you that I've often said that a field goal will oftentimes win you a game, but field goals seldom do. So I would like to see them when they get inside the red zone, inside the 5, inside the 3, 4th and 1. Come on, man up. Are you kidding me? Punch it in. And even if you don't convert because of your 5-star rock star defense, you're going to get the ball back at the 35, 38-yard line anyway. So let's talk about this weekend. Iowa hosting Troy. Not much of a move. I mean, it opened 22. We now see 22.5, a touch of 23 for the most part. So the early money has come in on Iowa. The total, again, respectfully, not a big difference between 38.5, 39. Those are not key numbers, 38.5, 39. So for all intent and purpose, I don't have an opinion on this game as we speak, and I have not played it. And if you're asking me today if I'm going to play it, probably not. Now let's talk about in-game betting, because you had mentioned that up. And David, you always ask such insightful, good questions. I think you said Gary from Northeast Iowa had this question in regards to in-game betting. Gary, it's a great question, because with the fact that 38 of 50 states now have online gaming, a lot of people are excited about in-game betting. It's something that I don't do, and I'm going to explain why, but I understand why it's extremely popular to the masses. In-game betting means that you can bet during commercial breaks, you can bet from play to play. As a sharp, as a professional sports bettor, I do not like it. First things first, I'm a value guy, numbers guy, math guy. You know, it's about odds and numbers and laws of probability, nothing more, nothing less. First of all, you have to pay a premium. The margin, the variance is very, very high. You have to pay a premium on juice, number one. Number two, I don't trust it, and here's why. Every sportsbook app as a sharp that I bet on, there's a few second delay. It's spinning, driving me nuts. They're going to see if they're going to approve, disapprove, change the number. That's number one. Number two, I've been in too many sports books where there's a delay. I'm watching the same broadcast, but there's like a 4 to 5 second delay from one broadcast to the other. So I don't like delays. It's in game. I love second half betting. You know, you have 10 to 12 minutes, but when you have just a few seconds, I've seen it happen too many times. One example, I'm tracking a basketball game a few years back, and I know mathematically, being a mathematical guy, I'm thinking, man, this seems counterintuitive why it's moving against me, because it almost always moves the way I think it's going to go. And sure enough, I come out of the commercial break, and within 6 seconds, Kyle Lowry hits a 3-pointer. And it's like, and I'm thinking, that's BS. They knew. I'm not being paranoid. Paranoia will destroy you. I'm not being paranoid. I'm just telling you, I don't trust it. I don't bet in game, and you can't make me.
And there you have it. See, I like that. Well, there's a reason you're so successful. And you wouldn't be in this business 30 plus years, 33 going on 34, 35 years, if you weren't successful and you have your formulas in your system. And I love that you stick with that. Folks, there he is, Northeast Iowa native, proud, but 33 plus years in Vegas, successful, sharp, Sports Bettor, Scott Pritchard, at Pritchard Wins via social media or pritchardspicks.com. Again, free picks, 62% plus winning, 66% plus winning percentage on the paid picks. So Scotty P, you put seminars out there. You're helping the viewers and the average sports bettor. That's why you do what you do and great at what you do. Can't thank you enough for joining us. And if we don't catch up with you next week, it'll be the following week. I'll rotate between you and our good buddy Mike Palm with the Circus Sportsbook back and forth. Love your insights as always. And of course, that great Northeast Iowa homeboy connection, my friend.
This coming Friday, 1 o'clock Las Vegas time, each and every Friday, I've got former ESPN guru, sports betting guru, Doug Kazarian's going to be on my show, Let's Bet. That goes 1 to 1:30 each and every Friday. My site, pritchardspicks.com, Pritchard's Pick of the Day. Get dialed in. David, big fan of you, big fan of the show. Keep doing what you're doing, my friend. It's working.
Likewise, that's easy to say back to you, my friend. For Scott Pritchard and Doug Wagner and Mitch Fick, my production partner, Greg Kajewski, back in studio. Greg also with Better at Better Edge or BetterEdge.com. And thanks to you, the viewers. For Hawkeyed, I'm Dave O'Hara. That's all from us. Thanks to all of you.